Welcome to Module 4, Conditionals and Loops. In your Python Foundations course, so far we have learned how to store and access data using Python's core data type. But programming isn't just about storing data, it's about decision making and repetition. So this module will introduce two critical building blocks in any programming language. Number one, conditionals, and number two, loops. What are conditionals? So we would need conditionals to make decisions based on certain rules like if, else, else if. What are loops? We would need to repeat a set of actions until a condition is met. In simple terms, conditionals are your program's brain. Loops are its muscles, right? So in first session, we are going to start with if, else if, and else. And we are going to start with understanding Boolean expressions, writing basic if statements, using else if and else for multiple conditions, nested conditions and indentation rules, and we'll also look at practical examples. In second session, we'll start repeating the logic for loops. We'll understand the iterations using for loops for list, strings, ranges, and looping over dictionaries, and we'll also look at practical examples like printing patterns, calculating total, and traversing nested lists. And third session, we'll repeat until the while loops. Right? What is a while loop? When to use while versus when to use a for. So we are going to understand the loop control with Boolean conditions. We'll understand infinite loops and termination logic. And we'll also have some real life examples like input validation, countdown timers, right? So, and in this session 4, we're going to understand the controlling the flow, break and continue. How to stop a loop early with break. How to skip and loop iteration using continue. Combining break, continue with for and while. And we'll also have this nested loop handling. Right? So, and yeah. Now let's start with this first session, the conditionals. If, else if, and else. So this is the Python's way of making decisions. Right? So what happens? Right? So let's imagine this. You only want to approve students who has scored about 35 marks. You want to print good morning if the time is before 12. Otherwise, you're going to say good evening. Or you want to show different prices depending on the age of the moviegoer. All this is possible because of the conditional statements. So they help your program to make decisions. So firstly, what is a conditional? What are conditionals? So conditional statements allow you to execute different blocks of code based on certain conditions, true, false, and values. So by default, Python provides if, the basic condition check, else if, check another condition if the previous one has failed, else run this block if all the previous conditions has failed. Now let's look at the syntax and basic example, the voting eligibility. Now what's the syntax for this? So if condition, right? So if condition, I'm going to give a code block here. Code block if condition is true. Else if another condition, right? So this is the code block if this condition is true. Then else, right? So there's another code block if all above conditions are false, right? So this is the syntax. Now let's have a basic example, voting eligibility. So what's the basic voting eligibility? So the age is nothing but the input of enter your age. Now if the age is greater than equal to 18, then I'm going to print you are eligible, right? So else I'm going to print you are not eligible. You're not eligible to vote. You're eligible to vote, right? So I'm going to get the input from the user. I'm going to give 51, right? So I hope you remember from the previous sessions, whenever I give this user input, it's automatically considered as a string. I've done a type conversion. I've given int of input of enter your age. I've given 51. Now I get the response, you are eligible to vote. So this is the basic voting eligibility. Now let's make it a bit more complex. Let's take a grading system. What happens in a grading system? Similarly, I'm going to take the marks is equal to int of input of enter your marks, right? So if marks is greater than equal to 90, print grade A plus. Else if the marks is greater than equal to 75, I'm going to print grade A. Okay, now I'll say else if the marks is greater than equal to 60, I'll print grade as B. Else if the marks are greater than equal to 35, I'm going to print grade C. Right? So at last the else print grade F. Fine. Now let's enter an input 30. Right? So it's an F. So this is a basic simple grading system. How we have done it using an if else. Right? So if, else if, I can add multiple else if. Right? So at last to close this, I'm going to give else here. Right? So if my marks are 51, right, the grade is C. If my marks are 99, the grade is A+. Right? So this is a simple grading system. How we have done it using if and else if. Now let's have a nested if. Nested if statement. How will I do a nested if? Let's take for example the name is nothing but the input of enter your name. Right? So the age is equal to input of enter your age. Right? Now I'm again going to give this logic. If the age is greater than equal to 18, right? So if name is equal to RF, right? So print, I'm going to print access granted to RF, right? So else I'm going to print access granted to access granted, that's it, right? So if at all, right? So I don't see this name and if the criteria doesn't match, else I'm going to print the access is denied. Access denied. Right? So there's an if statement. I have not used in while logic, so this will be closed. Name is RF, age is 18 or let's give 19. Right? So okay, it's giving an type error. If the age, if it's not there, it's not supported. Okay, alright. So okay, there's a very important learning. So I've not done the type conversion int of input RF and 19. Right, so access granted to RF. Now let's rerun this. 20, oh my bad, and 21. Right, so access granted. Right, so I did not give the other logic and all. I'm going to give Suresh and the age is 17. Access denied. Right, so the simple nested if statements, how and logic, right? So it's working here. Now we can have a simple login system. How a simple login system works. How a simple logic system works. So the username is equal to input username and I'm going to give the password is equal to input of the password. Right? So now if the username is equal to admin, if the password is equal to 1 2 3 4, right? So and so there's an if, right? So whenever there is an if, always the indentation matters, right? So after the colon, if I put an enter, the indentation automatically applies. Indentation is very important in Python, right? So I'm going to print login successful, right? So else I'm going to print incorrect password, right? So and I'm going to give another else, I'll print unknown user, right? So the username is, I'm just going to give it as Sarvesh. Okay, password is 1 2 3 4, right? So unknown user and okay, I have to give admin 1 2 3 4, right? So the login is successful, right? So if not, I've given admin and 1 2 3 3, right? So the password is incorrect. So the simple logic system, how we have built it using an if-else conditions here, right? So you can use or you can use the comparison and logical operators and or and not. For example, the age is 22 and whether this guy has his voter ID or not. True, right? So if the age is greater than equal to 18 and has voter ID, right? So I'm going to print eligible to vote. Else I'm going to print not eligible, right? So whether the age and voter ID. So I can include, right? So what all I can include? So I can add the and, I can add the or and not. All these conditions can be added here. And or not. You can use the comparison, and logical operator, right? So we can use the logical and comparison and logical operators, right? So combining, right? So combining the comparison and the logical operator, this makes much more easier, right? So we can give you some tasks here. So you can create a program that checks if a number is positive, negative, or zero. You can write a simple app that recommends output based on temperature, an even or an odd number checker, right? So by the end of the session, you have learned if, else if, and else to add logic to your programs and how to add and or within the if state, and how to write a clear readable decision structures. So this is the heart of any application, whether you're validating a form, checking stock levels, or controlling assets. So this conditional statements plays an important role. So we'll continue the looping in the forthcoming session.